At 6:17 a.m., Detective Emma Carter received a call from the city's most expensive hotel. A wealthy businessman was dead inside room 714. His name was Richard Mason. He was 58 years old, a successful real estate investor, and according to the hotel records, he had checked into the room with his wife only the night before. His wife was Victoria Mason. She was 36, beautiful, calm, and completely composed when the police arrived. She was sitting in a chair beside the window. She wasn't crying. She wasn't screaming. She simply looked at Detective Carter and said, "My husband had a weak heart." But there was something about those words that immediately bothered Carter. Because Richard Mason wasn't Victoria's first husband. He was her third. And all three husbands had died under strangely similar circumstances. 6 years earlier, Victoria had married a wealthy businessman named Andrew Collins. Andrew died less than a year after their wedding. The official cause was a sudden medical emergency. Victoria inherited his house. Then she married Michael Turner. Michael died 18 months later. Again, a sudden medical emergency. Victoria inherited his company shares. Then came Richard Mason. He had been married to Victoria for only 11 months. And now he was dead. 3 husbands. 3 deaths. 3 inheritances. Detective Carter couldn't ignore the pattern. She ordered a complete investigation into Richard's death. The hotel room was carefully examined. There were no signs of a struggle. No broken furniture. No forced entry. Richard's wallet was untouched. His expensive watch was still on his wrist. Nothing appeared to have been stolen. But on the bedside table, detectives found a photograph. It showed Victoria and Richard smiling at their wedding. Someone had written 4 words on the back. "You were warned about her." Carter stared at the message. Who had written it? And why? Police questioned Victoria. She remained remarkably calm. She said Richard had been stressed for several weeks. She claimed he had complained about chest pain the previous evening. According to Victoria, he went to bed around midnight. She slept in the same room. At approximately 5:50 a.m., she woke up and discovered he wasn't breathing. She called the hotel reception. Then the police. Her story sounded believable. But Carter asked one question. "Who warned your husband about you?" Victoria's expression changed. Only for a second. Then she smiled. "I have no idea." The medical examiner couldn't immediately determine the exact cause of death. There were no obvious injuries. But something was unusual. Richard's body showed signs that suggested he had been unconscious for some time before his death. Toxicology tests were ordered. While waiting for the results, Carter investigated Victoria's previous marriages. The first husband, Andrew Collins, had left Victoria a large mansion. The second husband, Michael Turner, had left her valuable company shares. Richard had recently changed his will. Victoria would inherit almost everything. That meant one thing. If Richard's death was murder, Victoria had the strongest possible motive. But motive wasn't proof. Carter needed evidence. Then an unexpected witness came forward. A woman named Helen Brooks contacted the police. Helen had been Richard's personal assistant. She told Carter that Richard had been terrified during the final week of his life. He kept saying someone was watching him, Helen explained. Did he say who? Helen shook her head. But he gave me something. She handed Carter an envelope. Inside was a single USB drive. Richard had recorded a video 2 days before his death. In the video, he looked exhausted. He said, "If something happens to me, don't trust Victoria. Then he mentioned something even more shocking. He had discovered that his previous wife hadn't died naturally. Carter reopened the investigation into Michael Turner's death. His medical records had disappeared from the hospital archive. The doctor who had signed his death certificate had retired, and the nurse who had cared for him had moved to another city. It looked like someone had deliberately erased the past. Carter tracked down the nurse. Her name was Sarah Lewis. When Sarah heard Victoria's name, she immediately became frightened. She told detectives that on the night Michael died, she had seen Victoria arguing with him. The next morning, Michael was dead. Sarah had reported what she saw, but her statement mysteriously disappeared from the case file. Carter now knew the previous investigation had been compromised. Then the toxicology report from Richard's death arrived. There was evidence that a foreign substance had entered his system. The death wasn't natural. Richard had been murdered. Victoria became the prime suspect. Police searched her home. They found nothing. No suspicious medication. No obvious weapon. No incriminating documents. Victoria had apparently anticipated the investigation. But Carter noticed something in the bedroom. 3 framed wedding photographs. Andrew, Michael, Richard. All 3 husbands were smiling. And beneath each photograph was a small date. Their wedding dates. Carter looked closer. The dates weren't the important part. Beside each photograph was a tiny handwritten number. 17. 17. 17. All 3 deaths had occurred on the 17th day of the month. That couldn't be a coincidence. Carter returned to the hotel. She reviewed every piece of CCTV footage from the night Richard died. At 11:41 p.m., Victoria entered room 714. At 12:03 a.m., she left. At 12:11 a.m., a man entered the room. He stayed for 7 minutes. Then he left. Carter froze the footage. The man's face was hidden. But he was carrying something. A small black envelope. Detectives traced him through the hotel lobby. He had registered under a false name. But his fingerprint was recovered from the elevator. The man was identified as Daniel Price, Victoria's former fiancé. Daniel was arrested. But instead of denying everything, he laughed. Then he said, "You've been looking at the wrong person." Daniel claimed Victoria had contacted him several weeks earlier. She wanted him to investigate Richard. According to Daniel, Richard had been secretly working with someone who knew Victoria's history. Daniel had entered the hotel room to retrieve evidence. But he insisted he hadn't killed Richard. He handed investigators the black envelope. Inside was an old photograph. Victoria standing beside her first husband, Andrew. But in the background was another man. A man Carter recognized. It was Richard Mason. Richard had known Victoria long before their marriage, and he had been connected to her first husband's death. The investigation took another shocking turn. Carter discovered that Victoria wasn't the mastermind. She had been part of a larger scheme. Andrew Collins had originally planned to expose a massive financial fraud involving Richard. Richard betrayed him. Andrew died. Victoria inherited his fortune. Years later, Victoria discovered the truth. She married Michael to get closer to the people responsible. Then Richard. She wasn't simply killing for money. She was secretly collecting evidence. But somewhere along the way, revenge had consumed her. And now Richard was dead. Carter confronted Victoria. For the first time, Victoria stopped smiling. She admitted that she had hidden evidence from the police. She admitted that she had manipulated her husband's financial arrangements. but she denied killing Richard. Then Carter placed the photograph on the table. Richard knew about Andrew's death. Victoria looked at it, then whispered, "I know." Carter asked, "Who killed him?" Victoria remained silent. Then the door opened. Helen Brooks, Richard's former assistant, entered the interrogation room. Carter turned toward her. Helen looked terrified. Then she confessed. She had been the person who killed Richard. Why? Because Richard had destroyed her family years earlier. He had been the mastermind behind the financial fraud. Helen had spent years waiting for justice. But when she realized Richard was about to escape responsibility, she took matters into her own hands. Victoria knew Helen was responsible. Instead of exposing her, she protected her. Not because she loved her, but because Victoria finally understood that revenge had created another victim. Helen was arrested. Victoria was charged for helping conceal evidence and manipulating the investigations surrounding her previous marriages. The truth about Andrew and Michael was reopened, and Richard's financial crimes were finally exposed. The newspapers called Victoria the Black Widow. But Detective Carter refused to use that name. She said, "She wasn't a widow who simply killed for money. She was a woman who allowed revenge to become more powerful than justice. 3 husbands, 3 deaths, 1 hidden conspiracy, and a woman who spent years living between love, greed, and revenge. Sometimes the most dangerous secret isn't who committed the crime. It's why everyone decided to hide the truth."